Hello, and welcome to the CYF course. This is our third session on discipline and boundaries, and today we'll speak more about the aspect of consequences. Galatians 6 verse 7 that I quoted in the last session is, "Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever a man sows, that he also will reap." This is what we call the law of sowing and reaping. And this is a biblical law, and the child needs to learn that this is life. He is integrating life. And this is so important that there are cause and consequences, cause and effects. What he does, if it's selfish, if it's self-centered, he will reap the consequence of it in the way people relate with him later. It is so important. We see what happens in society when a generation learns that its actions have no consequences. It means that a totally irresponsible generation, and this is the end. When you have a generation like that, this is the end. So this is so important that we put this foundation. And especially moms at home need to be careful, because they have a tendency to come and avoid their child to suffer the consequence. "Oh, you have to do that, but I will help you." Or, "I can do that for you because I love you so much." This is not love, actually. You are teaching them irresponsibility, that when they misbehave, anyway, someone will come and pay the consequence for them. And this is so important. You do not teach them the fear of the Lord and the responsibility. And this is the goal, teaching responsibility and maturity. So when we put consequence, we decide of some consequence for some misbehavior, we need to do it in a way that is very smart and in a way that is pedagogical. So the child will learn something from it. The child needs to grow from a baby who is totally dependent to a mature adult able to live an autonomous life and to be responsible for himself and the people around him. And this takes time. And our discipline strategy needs to strengthen this process in his life so he can be sent in the world as an adult mature. When you decide the consequence, it is important to be consistent when you apply them. We already spoke about that. Otherwise, the child learns how to win. "Oh, I can misbehave. I win 1 time every 2 or 3. So it's still okay. But if I see that this is something that applies regularly, I learn something and I need to change." Do not decide of a consequence under the effect of anger. When you are angry, when you are upset, you are not peaceful inside. And you are not in the right state of mind to decide of a consequence. So sometimes, when I'm upset, I say to my child, "Go in your room, I don't want to see you for a few minutes. I will calm down inside and I'll come back to you and we'll talk." So allow you to have some time to unload the weight in your emotions and for your anger to calm down. Do not start with heavy consequences. Consequence should be proportional to the fault. If your child is doing a little mistake and you slap him, what are you teaching? This is important that you think about the proportion of what you are doing. The consequence should be as close as possible from the fault or the mistake or the misbehavior. Do not do the consequence tomorrow or 3 days after, because you are no more in the context. So apply the consequence as immediately as possible. You know, the father needs to be very much involved in the discipline. He's the leader. He is the one in charge of that. So sometimes mom can say, "Okay, if you continue misbehaving like that, I will speak to your father when he comes home." And you will have a time with him. And when the father is taking his place, there is kind of a fear of the Lord or fear of the father, but in the right sense, a respect. "Oh, dad, I know that dad will be fair, but also he will come with strength and with firmness." And the child will learn that he cannot do that and escape. And it's good for moms to rely on their husbands, so he will apply the discipline. But sometimes the mom needs to apply it herself also. We cannot wait for the end of the day every time. Then, remember the child, you still love him. What you hate is the behavior, not the child. And you need really to differentiate between the behavior and the child. The child is not the problem. His behavior is. So the Lord needs to work on some aspects, but he's still unconditionally loved. And this is important that you convey that. Do not put shame on the child, especially in public. Discipline should always be done in private. If you discipline a child in front of his friends or even sometimes in public in the shop, sometimes you have, if your child is throwing a tantrum and crying and screaming in the shop, you discipline him here. But as much as possible, go in his room or go in a private place and you talk to him and you apply the consequence you have decided in private. You don't want to put shame on him. Shame is a very bad motivation to discipline. In history, sometimes we put the child in a corner with a kind of a donkey hat on his head, and everybody could mock. And the teacher, they hope that the embarrassment of being in this position with everybody looking at you, the shame, will be a powerful factor to bring change. But shame is not a good motivation. Shame is not a good engine for change. We need to be careful. God never puts shame on us. God brings conviction, he asks for repentance, everything is clear, and it's about what we do, but about who we are. We need to be careful about what we say and what we do. The consequence should be linked to the fault. For instance, your boys are playing football in the garden of the house, and he misses his shoot and he breaks the window of the neighbor. Wow! They come home crying. What will you do? Spank them? There is absolutely no pedagogical value in this approach. Here is what you should do. You go with them, knock at the neighbor's door, if he is not already outside. You ask your child to ask for forgiveness, to clean the mess, all the glass and the window parts that are in the living room. You ask your boy and you talk with your neighbor about that. How many mornings he should come, Saturday mornings, to help with mowing the lawn, with cleaning some parts or painting some parts, with working for the neighbor so he can repay the windows he had broken. You are teaching something here. You teach humility by recognizing your mistake, confessing it, asking for forgiveness, and repaying it. You are teaching life. So this is important that the consequence is linked with the fault. Then, the consequence should not be too heavy for the parent. If you ask your child to do something and he needs the help of his parents to do it and it lasts for 3 hours, you are the one having to pay the consequence as much as your child. He is the one who needs to learn, and he needs to learn that without it to be a burden for the parents also. Do not announce a consequence that involves the other parents without having first talked with him or her. For instance, dad is at work and mom say, if you continue, I will ask dad to do that. Dad comes home and his wife comes to him and say, oh, your boy did that and I want you now. I told him that you would do that for him and with him. And dad looks at mom and say, but I'm really not comfortable with that. And now mom said something and her husband is not supporting her. So it's very important that you decide together. We already shared about that. And then the consequence should bring discomfort to the child. It should be painful. And when I say painful, I'm not saying painful in the physical sense of the term. It should cost him something. So the pain of the consequence is stronger than the pain of not willing to change. So it should be painful. It should bring discomfort to the child to motivate him to change. Once again, we don't want fear to be the motivation, but still we want the consequence to teach him something. Concretely, what kind of consequence can we use to discipline our children? For instance, you can remove things he likes for a while. Toys, games, book, telephone. If you continue like that, I take your telephone for 2 days. Sometimes it's difficult because he needs his telephone, but during holidays it's possible, and there are a lot on the social network on this kind of stuff, or playing games, and they cannot do it. It's painful. Something is taken from me. It cost me something. Or you can remove an authorization for a while, like inviting friends or going to friends, the time to come home. You can remove privileges. Stop washing his clothes. I remember a mom, she was always asking her boys, teenager boys, to bring their dirty clothes in the dirty clothes baskets. And every week, she still had to go in their room and pick up all the dirty clothes. So she was tired because she felt not respected. She felt they didn't care, and she was like a slave for them. So one day she told them, okay, now I'm only washing the clothes that are in the dirty clothes basket. If there is no one, I don't go in your room to pick them up. Next week, no dirty clothes in the dirty clothes basket. So she washed just her clothes and her husband. 2 weeks, no dirty clothes. 3 weeks, one boy, he came. Mom, I have no more underwear. Where are they? And Mom said, oh, I guess they are scattered in your room somewhere. I told you I just wash what is in the dirty clothes basket. And if there is nothing, I don't wash nothing. I don't pick up in your room. So you can go to the washing machine. Here is the powder. It's an excellent opportunity for you to learn how to wash your clothes. Next week, all the dirty clothes were in the basket. So you see, you can remove some privileges when you feel that you are not respected. Washing your children's clothes is not an entitlement. We may produce an entitled mentality in the next generation if it's just normal that we do everything for them. They need to learn responsibility. It's the same as if every time you need to go somewhere and your teenager wants to come with you so he can go to see his friends in the city, but every time he's late and you wait for him or her for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, so one time you just go without him or her. And they learn that there is consequence. You have not just to adjust to their behavior or their being late. They want to be late, so let's live with the consequence. You can remove action for a time. You can take the child out of the room so he has time to think. He can go in his room, or he can go in the corner, not in the corner to shame him, but it's a place to think, to process, to take a decision. And as long as you have not decided to change your behavior, you stay in this corner. When you feel you are ready, you have taken a decision, and you are ready to ask for forgiveness, you raise your hand, I come, we talk, and after you come back in the action. There are many ways that you can put that on a chair. There are many ways. And sometimes people, they don't want to put children in their room because they don't want them to feel rejected. But you know what happened when Israel was deported to Babylon? It was like God saying, oh, I'm so fed up. Go in deportation for 70 years. I don't want to see you. But God still was with them. God still loved them, and he brought them back in their nation. So we need to reflect on earth the way God is dealing with man. God is teaching us what is being a parent and how to discipline our children. You can associate a privilege to a specific behavior. So when your child did something that is very special, you may offer him something or encourage him, but don't give reward every time he set up the table or he cleans his room. These are normal things for everybody in the house. It is not something we want to praise especially. Only when there is something very out of the usual, out of the ordinary, that we feel, okay, now I want to give a reward, I want to encourage, I want to do something special for this situation. Or you can delay a promise. When your child has been just insufferable for the whole day, and in the night you had planned to go to the movie with him, at one point he said, "Dad, when are we leaving?" You can say, "I wanted to go to the movie with you tonight, but with the attitude you had, I really don't want to spend the night with you, I'm sorry. So you need to work on your behavior. I have no fun to go out with you, to go to see a movie with you, after what we have experienced today. So I want to see an improvement." So you see, there are many practical ways to have smart consequences that will teach life and responsibility to our children, and to have consequences that are linked with the mistake or the misbehavior of our child. Now we'll put a few questions once again to help you discuss and talk together. Pray for one another. We are speaking about very important stuff, very basic, but in most families it's a little bit or a big bit dysfunctional. So we need to be refathered by our Heavenly Father, so we are able to do it the proper way with our children. And our family inheritance needs to be redeemed. Let's talk and share and pray for one another and ask the Lord to give us grace so we can be more like Him.